Good afternoon, everybody. We are up and running. So let me go ahead and switch everything over to the drawing stream layout. And we will resume the quest for creating more nightmare fuel. Alright, we got the BGM playlist going. I think my mic settings got mistakenly turned down in the last stream. I know people said they could hear me alright, but I think the audio was a bit lower than it normally is. So I tweaked some settings in OBS, so I might be coming in a little bit louder than last time. But hopefully it sounds normal and you can hear me over the music. Money on my mother, mine. Cop 5 haircuts at the same time. White gold pants, jet ski made of wine. Foie gras bust of Albert Einstein, get money. Hey, Sour Lad's here, and thank you for the resub, Sour Lad. 13 months, over a year. That's very kind of you. Much appreciated. I see Iconic is here. How's it going, Iconic? How's your Tuesday going? All right. I think we're all right on sound. So what are we doing today? This is going to be a continuation of the last drawing stream I did a while back, where we were drawing sprites to use in Pokemon Infinite Fusion. And I've learned some things. I have learned some things about formatting and style, in addition to some techniques for making these things. And I'll show you guys some of the things I'm cooking right now. So I mentioned it on the Discord over the weekend, I think it was. But last time we were talking about it, I mentioned that I was going through the application process for a Spriter role in the Infinite Fusion Discord. And took a bit, because they're really swamped with applications and people trying to get approved so that they can add sprites to the game. But it is done. I made it through the application process, and I have officially gotten 3 of my sprites approved, and that's what I put into our Discord. And so based on that, we're going to be continuing to work on some new ideas for things that are going to be uploaded in the future. And I'm pretty excited about it. It'll be a little while before I think the stuff that I've gotten approved is in the game, because they upload the sprite packs at the end of the following month. So for October, it's not going to be till the November 30th update, I think. And my stuff should be in there then. And I'll most likely still be playing Infinite Fusion in November. It's going to be a long playthrough. So once that happens, I'll be able to show off on stream, and you should be able to see my name with the credits. So that's exciting. Let me add a Chrome browser source. I want to show you folks the Fusion calculator, because we're going to kind of collectively figure out what we're going to create today. But I got to pull in some resources and links. That way I could show them on stream. So let me add a source first here. I don't normally do browser stuff. Let's see, put this here. Oh, maybe I'll do a new one. Let me see if I can get this source here before I browser. Make sure I add the right window. I guess I could do it on window too. That works. Let's see if this will work. For some reason it's not coming up. Why is it not coming up? You, go away. In the meantime, let's look at this base sprite for Pincer, which we may or may not be using for today. Okay, let's see if this works. Yeah, that should do it. Not exactly the way I wanted to do it, but it's fine. I'll put this here. Let me minimize it for a second. Explain what I'm trying to do. Is I have Twitch chat on my other browser tab, and so I have to jump between the chat and this browser window I have open. But I did see icon that says happy for you. Thanks. I appreciate it. I know I've been talking a lot about the Spriter roll thing, and it took a while. They didn't have a lot of extensive revisions they wanted me to do, but it just took a while for them to get to me, and that's cool. The people over there in the Discord are very nice. Okay. So I gotta grab one more thing. We're gonna look at the calculator, and I'll show you folks how it works in case you haven't seen it before. And then we will actually go in and start grabbing resources too. There we go. Let's put... Oh. Sprite links. You go there. Okay. So before we pull up the stuff in the browser, I have it prepped and it's ready to go. I guess I can show you folks some of the stuff I'm working on right now that's currently in line to be submitted and or approved. I got one right now that's undergoing review. It's almost done. I think I might need to ping a couple people one more time, but I think it's mostly done. And it's not one that I think you've seen since last time we did the Pidgey. We did the Pidgey ones, and I think the Sun Kern Paris one I think we did on stream. But what we did was actually I can recap a little bit in case people tuning in haven't seen the previous stream. We did this one, and these have been updated a little bit compared to the ones we did on stream, so these versions are final, essentially. This is what I put as a teaser in the Discord, and I'll show them off here real quick. This first one is a Pincer Pidgey fusion. Some of the things they had me do is fix some of the lighting and fix some of the color balance a little bit. But it's more or less the same as the one we did on stream, just tweaking coloring and shading a little bit. Pretty simple. I don't think I want to use this gen's sprites in the future. They do a lot of different colors, and it's kind of annoying to work with. But not bad. It's a small one. The next one, which is a bit more complicated, is the evolution of that one, which is Pincer Pidgeotto, which originally looked like this. This is the one you folks would have seen on stream. And the final version, after going through some updates and suggestions in the review, looks like this. Doesn't look dramatically different, but the head's a little bit wider over here. I'll zoom in a bit. So that you can see both rows of eyes now, and the mouth is actually facing at an angle in this direction to the left. They recommended that I fix the perspective so that it's facing the same way and the mouth isn't facing straight on like it was in the original. So it's kind of subtle. If we flip between the two, you can see the head's a little bit narrower and the mouth looks like it's facing straight at the camera. And then here, the head's a little bit wider and the mouth is facing towards the left. So this is the final version that was approved. And then third one, where did I put you? Down here. This is the Sunkern Paris. This is the one it might have been the third one I drew. I can't remember what order I did these on the stream, but this one is straight out of the playthrough, which would be kind of fun since we already technically had this one. Sunkern Paris, Minor changes here with some of the shading, and then I added a little bit of shading to the top of the head. This one required the least amount of revisions. It was more or less okay. Wait, I submitted it. Just had to tweak a couple minor things. And so this little guy is also good to go. These are the 3 that are currently approved, and at the very least should show up in the update. We'll see. I'll definitely mention it somewhere once it's there, because I think it's kind of a cool thing to see your work featured in an official game. And so I've been working on a couple different sprites. They're not all Nightmare ones, but that tends to be what I like to focus on since it's kind of a neat aesthetic. That's probably what we'll do today. But the third one in the Pincer Pidgey line, which I did not show on stream, this one's brand new. This is the one that's currently going through review now and should be approved within the week, I think, is the Pincer Pidgeot. Third fusion or third evolution of the bird, and it looks like this. This one's bigger. This one's a bit bigger than the Pidgeotto one, and is a bit more detailed as far as the face and the overall amount of detail. This one took a bit of working on to do. And the last thing that I changed when I was going through review is adding some of the hair on the head, so it looks like it's going from the head down to the back. That's what I changed on this one last time I went in here to do anything with it. And so hopefully, relatively soon, this third fusion in the line will be approved for addition to the game. And the pincer fusions are fun just because they can look really kind of wacky and insane with the mouth. It's been fun trying to adapt that idea and then turn it into something cohesive that looks like it has the elements of, its different components. And we'll kind of talk as we get into designing a new one, how I've kind of learned how to follow the style and the lighting and shading for this particular type of drawing, these sprites, since they follow the Pokemon format, image format as it were. And that's been a bit of a learning experience. Let's see, I can show maybe one more. I've got a lot more than this that I have more or less done, but this is the one that's currently been submitted for review. We'll do one more. I have one here that I need to probably clean up. It's not quite done. Maybe we'll do that towards the end of the stream. But this was a request, actually. This was a request from Matt. We were talking sometime recently. And this was not a Nightmare fusion. This is one of the ones I've done that's a bit more simple and not horrific and terrifying. This is Latinair. This is Latias and Dragonair. And so this one was created by basically taking the head from one of the sprites of Latias. It's like a legendary dragon. Nothing looks like a spaceship. And then adding it onto Dragonair's body. And then adding the spikes and fins, which are inspired by Latias. And then updating the color scheme to match. And so this one was a bit more simple than some of the other ones I've done. But I think it's pretty effective. And so I may tweak a few things on this version, but this one's most likely going to be submitted like this, and we'll see what happens. All right. Actually, we'll leave this here. We'll leave this here, and now I'm going to pull up the browser, and I'll show you folks how we're going to go about figuring out what we're going to do here. Okay. So on screen now, covering up the drawing window, is the Infinite Fusion calculator from, I think it's Dina. don't know how you pronounce their name, but this is basically a comprehensive repository of assets that are currently in the game and fusions that have been added. So it's pretty extensive database of information. I've linked this in the Discord before, but this is what I use to take a look at what's in the game, especially when I'm playing and I want to see if something I'm going to fuse and put in my party is going to look cool. And so right now, I think this one is updated through number 420. There's some newer ones that are coming in an update I don't think are here yet. So Stunfisk is the last one to be added here. And this person works with the actual community. Their links down here. But using this, here's how it works. So this is what I was using before when I was trying to figure stuff out. So let's say we wanted to do pincer. We can do it by specific components, or we can do it one at a time. So if I just do a search for pincer, it'll not only show me the base sprite in the game, kind of the quote-unquote default, but also alts. There are alt versions people have uploaded or created or used to make bases for other people to create sprites off of. So right now there's 8 variants for pincer. You can switch in-game using the Pokédex feature which version of the sprite you want for this particular Pokemon. And that's pretty handy. But if we scroll down, we get into fusions. This calculator pulls every component that's in the game using this Pokemon, and it's either going to pull a generated one using the Japeel algorithm, which is a site originally, I think, which combines like the head and the body, and it'll change the palading. It's basically algorithmically generated. Or if you have custom ones, they'll have an artist name here, like this one, and it does this for the head and body, and then the body head, and so it does the head body first, and then it reverses it. So this one, Pinsir, is Pinsir head, Bulbasaur body. This one is Bulbasaur body, Pinsir head. And so just by searching one component, if you want to do it this way, you can see this is right now, at least as of this update on the site. Here are all of the fusions that use Pinsir, and the ones that have unique sprites and ones that are auto-generated. And so when I was going through figuring out what I wanted to draw initially, I basically went down the list to see what fairly simple ones in the beginning didn't have a fusion that I could use to kind of learn. And if we go down to the birds, that's how we get Pidgey, Pinoto, and Pidgeot. These 3 here are auto-generated ones. And that's how I went about figuring out, okay, if these are the ones that don't have a sprite, I'm going to try and create these. So then I had to go and grab the assets for them, which I'll show off in a sec. So I figured it could be a fun exercise to come up with some components to fuse, and then grab the assets and then do them here in real time on the stream. And you can see scrolling through, some of these are kind of goofy and silly. Some of the auto-generated ones, like this one doesn't look that bad. Pinsir looks all right. It's the anti-aliasing that makes it kind of funky, because you can see the way it scales and it looks a little bit weird, but it's functional. But Pinsir especially, a lot of the bugs have some wild custom sprites, which is why I wanted to focus on doing some customs with Pinsir, because just the stuff that's in here now is pretty cool. Like here's Pinbok, Pinsir Arbok. A lot of teeth. I think we saw some further up for the starters, like Pintoise. This is Pinsir Blastoise. That's a wicked sprite with all of the mouths on the back. Very cool. That had to be a pain in the rear to sprite with all that detail. Blastoise is pretty cool as well. Very kind of mutant teleporter accident cursed. Won't go through every single one, but if we kind of scroll down the list further, Pinbat's kind of fun. I think that's using the original red and blue Golbat Sprite, I think. Pinsect. This is Pinsir Parasect. A lot of detail. Very cool looking. Ooh, the Poly Whirl? Poliwhirl and Poliwrath ones are kind of cool. I like the concentric circles on the mouth. Looks like a multiple rows of teeth. Again, that has to be very difficult to draw in shade. But yeah, this site's neat. Even if you're not doing sprite work, just looking through and checking out all the combinations of things here are pretty wild. So I figured the easiest way to do this today would be to pick a component and then look through and see what holes in the Pokedex for fusions exist that we can work on. And I don't want to go super complex, otherwise I'll probably be working on one for like 3 sessions. But I figured I would take a suggestion from the chat first. So rather than 2 components, because we won't know until we search if they have a fusion custom sprite, I will let someone throw out a Pokemon that's in the game, and I can tell you if it's in the game because I can just search it here. And then we'll look at the results and see which one doesn't have a custom sprite, and maybe start there. I'd say let's exclude the legendaries because the legendaries have a lot of customs already, and those get really, really complex. So outside of legendaries, someone give me a Pokemon from like the first few gens, and I'll make sure it's in there, and then we'll look it up to see. And then based on that, I'll grab the assets and we'll get to fusing. Here, I'll look at the chat on the other screen. I'll keep this up. Iconic says Haunch Crow. I don't know if Haunch Crow's in. Let's look. It is. Oh yeah, Haunch Crow. Okay, it's the gangster bird. Okay. And I see Sarlat says maybe an ice type fusion. Let's see what's in the listing for something that's ice type as we're scrolling through. Maybe we could do Haunch Crow something ice, so like dark ice. Whoa, Haunch Toys, that's pretty cool looking. Arcrow, that's pretty cool looking. Arbok, Haunch Crow. Look at the patterning on that one. Patterning and shading, really nice. I like how the through line here on the fusions is Pokemon wearing like some sort of mobster outfit with like a fur coat. Let's see, probably not going to see ice until a little further down. Like Jinx, that's probably one of the first ones. There's Ducrow. That's kind of a silly one. Ice Flying. That's a generated one. It actually doesn't look terrible. Haunchster. This one's Haunchcrow Cloister. That could be a possibility. Trying to combine those two would be a pretty interesting challenge. I don't even know exactly what you would do there. Maybe you would do something like, So I'll explain a bit more in detail when I actually start drawing stuff, but there's some rules you got to follow when you're combining things based on which one's the head, which one's the body. And so this one is Haunchcrow head, Cloister body, obviously. That's an interesting idea. Okay, let's keep looking for other things that have ice type. Probably more in Gen 2, I would think. Oh, there's Haunchthur. There's also an auto-generated one, kind of weird looking. Oh, here we go. So here's Jinkrow. Jinx head, Haunchcrow body. That's pretty cool looking. I like that one. That's a custom sprite. Very detailed. Looks like a Disney character, like a sassy bird Disney character. Haunchbuzz is pretty cool too. That is definitely a unique pose sprite. Look at the detail on that one. Okay, let's keep looking. I was wondering if they had one for Articuno, Haunchkuno, and Articrow. These are both ice fusions. They don't have a custom sprite. This one kind of looks like it could be a custom sprite until you kind of see some fuzzing on the anti-aliasing around the head. This one looks like it's pretty passable on its own. Interesting. I figured most of the legendaries had fusions for the majority of the cast. Like if we scroll down a little bit further, Zapcrow, that's pretty cool looking. Or Haunchtrez. It's Articuno that doesn't have one. We could do Haunchcrow Articuno. What do we think about that? I know I said no legendaries, but I figured it'd be because they have them already. But this one doesn't. I kind of like that. Let's see what we can find for assets. I can show off how the assets work for this. So 256. So that's Gen 2. Gen 2 or 3. So the site I use that they suggested on the Discord itself is called the Pokemon Database, and it's a pretty comprehensive sprite archive of everything that's been released for the Pokemon games, and it has their sprites. So let's do Articuno first, since that's Gen 1. What it is you go in here and you look up a Pokemon, and you can see its sprites going from Gen 1 up to whatever Generation 9 is current. And you can see the different kind of stylings of each gen's sprite work, and then these ones were adapted from the 3D models. So I'm thinking Gen 5 is good. So we could save that. Now we go grab Haunchcrow. Which is it? Is it Gen 3? Its evolution and the base form were in different games, right? Or was it Gen 4? I'm just going to search for it. There you are, Gen 4. Gen 4 and 5 sprites are very similar. It might just be the shading. We'll grab the Gen 5 sprite. It's almost in the same pose too, which is also handy. Okay. Okay, so we got that. We can hide that window. Let's save this stuff and we'll get it loaded up. Iconic says I'm bad with remembering Pokemon stuff. That's okay. I only know the earlier gens really well. The later ones I don't know as thoroughly. So going through this exercise and playing through Infinite Fusion has been a good exercise in learning more about Pokemon. So I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're going to take the assets that we just downloaded and we're going to copy them into our canvas here in Photoshop and then figure out how we're going to go about fusing things together. And I'll explain the rules. This is something I've learned a bit more about since the last time we did this. All right, here's Articuno. Oh, that's a big one. Okay, do the same thing for Honchkrow. That scale's pretty close, actually. Sarah says, only random Pokemon I've seen from the anime in description. I think my problem is I haven't played the recent games. The last one I played was Sun, and it was about half of it before I got bored. And so usually Pokemon Go is where I'll see a lot of things that are newer being introduced. But like the latest games that have come out, last couple, I haven't played. Okay. Iconic says, oh, this looks fluid. I'll fix it. I don't want to get banned on Twitch. Or were you talking about something else that you were looking at? Don't get me banned. It's not like you can clip it. Okay, so let's explain some rules. when you're doing fusions, specifically in Infinite Fusion and following the rules of the game, so you pick a component that's going to be, let me get my pencil here. You pick a component that's going to be the head, and then you pick a component that's going to be the body, which we knew already. What I didn't know until I started doing some research further is that the color palette of the body, when you fuse them together, is determined by the head. So for this one, we said this was, it's either going to be Honchkrow head or Articuno head. I think Honchkrow head is the way to go, and that's Honchkuno dark ice as opposed to ice flying. So it means the head is going to be the prominent detail on the body here, which is going to be interesting. But the color palette has to match Honchkrow. And so the coloring, shading, and everything that goes into the fusion has to match that of the head component. And that means we're going to need to take the elements and put them together, but also adapt the shading and the color paleting and everything so that we can follow the rules, as it were. And obviously, like Iconic is saying, one of the key things to remember is the hat. And we'll try a couple different approaches and then kind of demonstrate what I've been experimenting with recently. But definitely the hat. So let's see. Okay, we'll keep it like this. I can always paste these assets in again if I need them. So first, we're going to hide the head component, and we're going to be working with the main body for Articuno here. And the first thing I'm going to do to give myself some room to work is I'm going to separate the left wing from the body. I'm going to put it on another layer. I may or may not use it later. Cut. There we go. And the reason why we're doing this is to get the wing out of the way so we can focus on the head. The rest of the body, I think I'm going to leave for now. We can kind of adapt that on the fly. But if I'm not doing something that's completely drawn from the ground up, which we're not really going to probably do today, we'll see. We'll see how far we get with this one. But if I'm not doing something that's drawn completely from scratch, the way I start is by separating the assets into parts and then starting to put them together and see what we get. So if we bring this one back, we're going to delicately remove this one's head from its body. And this is very difficult to do with my keyboard all the way over here. But it should be fine. There we go. Decapitated. And probably what we'll do, since it does anti-alias a bit when you just do like a selection deletion like this, we're going to clean up pixels around the outline just so they're not hanging out there. Because let me tell you, one thing that the submission reviewers do when you put stuff through the Discord is they will run a search on a different site to see if you have redundant shades of color in your sprite, which is a little bit difficult to describe, and I'm sure people aren't that interested. But if you have, real quick example here. Let's say we have, well, it's a little bit tough to see. Let me go for a darker color. Let's say red. Okay. Let's say we're coloring something that has red. And based on color filling or taking colors from certain assets, we had another shade that looks like this. Now, my monitor, especially my main monitor here, my drawing monitor, is old, so the color contrast is a bit lower. But these shades are very, very similar. And I could kind of tell the difference. I could tell this one right here is darker, but they're very close. And so you might have one or two stray pixels of a different shade that's really close just based on how you're filling stuff. And it might be unapparent to your eye that you have redundant shades. But there's a site that takes an image and it runs through an algorithm and identifies every unique color down to like it's the actual numerical value, and it'll tell you. And so it might come up and say, hey, you have like 4 pixels of this red right here that's really similar to this other one, and that's how you can tell. So you have to go through and then delete the redundant shades and reduce down that amount. And you probably wouldn't be able to do that without using a site, so I'm glad they showed me how to do that. But that's not something I'm going to be too worried about on stream today. I'm more interested in getting the actual Pokemon drawn and getting the details. The actual finalization and editing and stuff I can do off stream. You folks don't need to be bothered with that. It would be incredibly boring. But next up, what we're going to do is we're going to decapitate Articuno here. We don't need the head. I am kind of curious about the proportions with the neck, though, because Honchkrow doesn't really have much of a neck. We'll use the reference here. It's got kind of a short, stubby neck that's almost invisible because it's got high shoulders and then the floof here. And Articuno has a bit longer neck, but still relatively short. So to me, the first thing to do would be to figure out where the head would go, and then figuring out the scale is going to be like the secondary priority, I think. Because we don't want it to look like it's just stapled onto a body. And I think I know a good way to kind of do that. In fact, it might look better if we go a little bit forward, and we have to change the kind of angle here. And what you'll see me do here is I'll be outlining everything that we draw kind of free-handed in black to kind of place out where all the boundaries and everything are, and then we'll go in and fix the colors of the outline when we get there. So what my original thought was to take the kind of position and change the patterning on the chest so that it matches kind of what Honchkrow's does. Problem is, it looks like the body is really compacted if we do that. And one thing that we don't have the ability to do readily in Photoshop for doing this type of sprite drawing is just rotate things at a pixel level and have it scale properly. I wish it could do that, but if we rotate something, I'll just show you. The anti-aliasing and scale gets all weird because it's pixel by pixel. So if I were to rotate the Honchkrow head here, oh, that's not what I want. I do it like this. It does that. And there's ways around the anti-aliasing, but because the pixels are being kind of tilted and rotated, it doesn't really work. I'd have to redo the entire line and then change the shading. And so just rotating stuff isn't going to work here. But one option we have is redrawing it too. So it's going to be a matter of figuring out where the placement makes the most sense and then lining in the details. I think they had it too low. We could go a little bit higher. Sarlet says, looks like a mobster ready to tell the boys to fire. Yeah, that's definitely the vibe. And one thing we could do, again, the main thing is the head's got to be recognizably from the head component and then have the color paletting on the rest. But you really kind of have a lot of freedom to, adapt things as you want detail wise, which is fun. You don't have to just follow a strict formula. So one thing I was thinking, what if we find placement for the head? And again, this might take a little bit of editing around. But I was thinking, if we look back at Haunch Crow, big thing here is it's got this kind of like part here with the plumage on the chest. It looks kind of like a tie or like a neckerchief almost. Something that like you'd wear with like a mobster outfit. That's the whole vibe of this particular one, right? So my thought was, if we get the head into position, what if we take that kind of pattern and we make it more like a scarf around, this is just a rough approximation, around the shoulders, like an actual scarf. And then we can maybe fix the plumage on the chest a little bit, but basically you would have like, this is just, again, approximation, but you have what looks like the white wrapped around the neck instead of coming from the chest. You know how you see in like the mob movies where like the mobsters have like the really fancy Italian suit and like the silk scarf around the shoulders? Something like that. But the real question is, where do we want the head? Another option that we have would be to use a different sprite. If it turns out that trying to adapt this particular combination is difficult, we can always use a different combination of sprites too. Sarlad says, what's the Pokedex description? I don't actively know if the site puts that on there. You have to look at like Bulbapedia or something. But for the in-game Pokedex for Infinite Fusion, it combines the entries of the components. So it takes like a sentence from the head, and it combines the entry with the sentence from the body. And that can yield some interesting results. I'm looking at the Gen 3 sprite for Articuno. I'm going to say I'm not super thrilled with the base poses that Articuno has in the games. It's a really neat legendary Pokemon, but its sprites have kind of like a goofy come at me bro YMCA pose in majority of the games from 4 on. The Gen 3 one looks kind of cool, but we'd have to change the angle or work with the angle because it's facing a different direction. I think the one we chose is probably the best route. The key is the scale. So we have a couple options. We can try and make it work with this, or we can try and go really ambitious and try and draw a lot of it from scratch. So let's play around with positioning and see if we can come up with something that works. Because let's see, if we were to do this, the way I would probably approach it, if we were going to draw it completely from scratch, and I'll do it in rough primaries, just as sort of an an example. This is how I usually do sprites on my own when it's not for something like this. Again, this is just approximations of the ideas based on what we talked about. It'd have to be really well defined. Basically, I'd have to define the entire like body in rough shapes, figure out the pose, and then put all the details in. That's really hard, and I would only do that for Pokemon I know really well, because it's easy for me to draw them kind of from memory. For something like this, I think that'd be difficult. Like, if I was going to draw it from scratch, I'd probably do like a grounded pose to answer Sourlad's question, but have like, let's see, this is just a sketch. I'm not going to actually use this. Like a grounded pose with like one wing up. Like that, kind of like putting an arm out, like you said, giving the signal to fire. It'd probably be something like that I would do. But I think that might be a bit more ambitious than what we're trying to do here. It's essentially kind of like a take on this base pose we're working with here, but it would be kind of more leaned forward instead of rearing up. And that's the real challenge here. Conk says, be right back, gonna eat. Alright, we'll be continuing to experiment around with ideas. Enjoy your dinner. Oh, I can see these feathers are going to give me trouble. I'll try and keep it simple for now. I like the idea of the kind of scarf thing, but getting that to actually work is going to be a challenge. If we line it in like that to start, and then what we would do is we'd kind of clean up the borders and boundaries so it looks like it's part of the head. It doesn't look like it's just stapled on again. Okay, it's a little better. This particular side is proving to be annoying though. Okay, that's better. I like the way that looks a lot better. And so we basically made the proportions are kind of interesting. We basically made this bird a bit taller and a bit more bulky on the upper body, which I know it's a little bit tough to see because there's some of the original sprite on here, but if we kind of delete some of this extra stuff out of here, just get out of the way. Looking at the lines, it's kind of like if we took Articuno and went to the gym, did some more heavy lifting. Sarlat said, "Ice cold mob boss, ruthless with his lackeys." Another idea that I'll consider, and we'll see if I remember this for later. I could make a bunch of the little Murkrow, right? Murkrow's the form that comes before Honchkrow, the little guy. I could have a bunch of like little Murkrows with like mob outfits, maybe sunglasses or something, like little mob minions around. That would be kind of fun. Okay, let's delete out the color. Shading is also going to be kind of a pain. We'll deal with that later. What I'd probably do with this other wing, this would be like maybe the last thing I do. I'll probably take the wing. I can't rotate it again because it'll anti-alias, but maybe redraw it so that instead of it being straight up, again, the hands in the air, just kind of illustrate an idea that I had. Redraw it slightly with a different position so it looks more like rough example. I might actually this is kind of a wide sprite, so I might not have room to do that, but maybe either do that or, for sake of simplicity, just fold it and have it look like, again, I like Sarlat's suggestion about, in fact, I'm going to leave this here as a placeholder, given the order to fire. So I might have to change the curvature a little bit so it doesn't look weird, but here's the other arm kind of tucked in on the side. Yeah, I'm just going to delete that. It's kind of distracting. But something like that, so it's there, but main wings over here. And we could even slightly redefine the wing, maybe thicken it out a little bit, since I think Honchkrow's wings are a bit more bulky than Articuno's. Let's go ahead and save our progress here. This one's tough. This is one of the more challenging ones I've attempted. It's because it's a bit more unusual in the components. Sarlet says red and blue has Articuno is a bad omen for Lost Mountain explorers. That sounds familiar. It's like an omen of death. Kind of same energy, really, with this one. Instead of being lost on a mountain, it's you didn't pay your rent on time. You owe the bird mob money, and now you're gonna die. Okay, so we have two basic tones. Interesting. So Haunchcrow's main body doesn't have a ton of variation on the coloring. We've got a light shade. I can't see that. A light shade here, dark shade here, and then the chest feathers, plumage is a different color, and then the tail feathers. That's all that says. You come to my territory with no offering? Get 'em, boys. Leave no body. Caw! Make them an offer they can't refuse. Okay, base color palette. So this one has less shades. This one has less shades than the Gen 5 sprite for Articuno. So my guess is I'm going to need to simplify the shading because Articuno has like 4 just on the body. 1, 2, 3. 3 shades. Simplified down to 2. I can do that. First, we're going to merge this down. So now this is on one layer. And we're going to go like this. This is how I do the color assignment just because it's easier for me to remember. I will do all the light shades first. We'll do the body. And then we'll worry about the tail later. I got an idea for the tail. Yeah, the problem is there's 3 shades. I'm gonna change my strategy a little bit here. We're gonna do this for the light shades, light and mid shades. Starlight said, force other Pokemon to bring berries from down below. It's like a berry sweatshop. Seems like a Pokemon that would work for Team Rocket. Ooh, that's another thing I need to do. I'm gonna have to do the lines as well. Maybe I'll just do them in black. That's the most difficult part, is doing the lines, because the lines have to follow the light source, and I suck at shading. But we'll leave it for now. I'm just trying to get the general shading down. Specifically the patterning on the wings, that's going to require a lot of touch up, I think. Starlight says,
I'll give you some nice cooling winds for the hot burning sun, and you bring us some food, capiche?
we're inventing lore. Midstream. You know what? I don't normally do this way, but for this one, because it's technically a lot more challenging, I'm gonna basically block the wing. The body I'll kind of leave, but the wing I'm gonna block in one color. I don't normally do that because I try and follow the shading, but I think I'm gonna have to improvise a little bit because it's a bit more complicated than some of the other ones. What I mean by block is I'm going to basically take it and make it essentially one shade. And then I'll have to redo the shadowing completely from the ground up later. Which is fine. That's not hard. In fact, if I'm going to do that, I'm just going to outline all of the parts in black. All these parts are going to need to be shaded appropriately in the final version of this, but I'll be able to see where all of them are easier if I do it like that. I'm going to form fill it. Hey, Bits is here. What's up, Bits? Good evening to you, friendo. How's your Tuesday going? Hopefully well enough. We are attempting to create sprites for Pokemon Infinite Fusion. And on topic, we're working on a bird. A gangster bird, but a bird nonetheless. Bit says, just woke up from a brutal migraine nap. Hopefully your migraine goes away. I will explain the nature of this bird in a sec. I'm just doing some line blocking in here. And yes, Sourlight is making cool gangster bird lore. So let me save again. It would be quite a shame to lose all this work. We're doing a fusion of Honchkrow from Gen 4 and a zoomed out Articuno from Gen 1. This is for Pokemon Infinite Fusion. I was telling the chat about how I got approved to be an official spriter for the game so that the stuff I make actually gets added to the game. Not say Honchkrow. Honchkrow, Articuno. And so we're putting these two together. We're doing Honchkrow as the head component and the Articuno body. And so the way the rules work, and this bird was kind of all over the place because we're just putting together the details. When you combine two Pokemon, you have to take the head, and the head has to be clearly defined, and then the head determines the color palette for the rest of the body. And then use elements from the body, obviously, to show the body. So this thing's got to clearly have a Honchkrow head, and it's got to have the dark blue color palette for the whole thing. And so that's what we've been doing so far, is slowly putting things together And again, the shading is going to be a nightmare, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and lock this in. Bit says, that's so cool. I was wondering how their sprites work. Yeah, so the ones that are fan created follow that basic principle, and then you've got to follow like the shading and color style from the Pokemon games, which we may or may not get to at this one. At this point, I'm just trying to get the details. But the results of the exercise, I was showing the chat earlier. If we go back down to my folder of more or less finished ones, that's how you get stuff like this. This is Pinsir Pidgeot. Pidgeot is the name, in-game name. Sarlat says, any ice details? I'm going to try and put some highlights on the wings. Well, we'll see when I actually get there, since if we jump to Honchkrow real quick. Honchkrow's got like the white and red, so I might try and work that into the wings. We'll see. That's going to be tough because it's a dark, what did I say, dark ice. So yeah, that'll be a challenge. It's going to be in the color palette, but I'll be happy as long as the shape isn't too lumpy. But yeah, so this is stuff like this is our end goal, and we just started working on this one today. So what I was thinking, and again, we can see when we get there. What I was thinking is doing like a mix of red and maybe white on the tail, and then maybe putting white highlights on the wingtips up here. We'll see. This thing's going to be primarily like a dark color palette, so that's most likely going to be what it looks like. That's not what I want. In fact, I think I need to fix the color blocking on the wing and just redo the shading altogether. That's going to be the toughest part. Technically, the wing ends down there. So that needs to be black, really. It won't be black in the end. It'll have to be appropriately shaded, but that's bounded so I can see it more than anything else. So again, just working on one layer, we gotta deal with the shading. This is the part that I was thinking about when we picked this combination initially. The light source is coming from up here. This is another thing I learned. Light source is coming from the top left and shining down. So there are real sticklers in the review phase for following the light source and making sure the shadows are realistic. So we'd have some shadows being cast by the beak and the head. And then I think the majority of this was going to be dark blue. If anything, it's going to be primarily dark blue and then maybe some highlights of lighter blue. So like if we look at this part of the shoulder, probably be something like that. Again, shading is going to be the toughest part. Iconic says, I return. This looks great. Thank you. Hopefully you had a good dinner. I may need to color map out the outline. So here's another thing, just for educational purposes. The line work shading has to follow whatever it is you're coloring. So in this case, it's going to be the head. So we have, and this is where it gets tough because again, I don't have a really modern monitor, so I have to be really careful with my colors. If we block in each shade, we've got this kind of darkish blue and this kind of purple indigo color, which I think is a different shade. No, it's not. So we have that color, we have black. And then for the light colors, let's go in order. We have blue. Then we've got red. Shadow for red, and the line color for red. For the yellows, we've got regular yellow, base shade yellow, and then the line color for this one, which is this kind of dark, muddy, kind of yellow-green. And that's pretty much the palette. I don't know. Oh no, there's the grays too. Okay, my bad. So we got the grays. So it's kind of white. Off-white, rather. Mid-tone. And the lines. And so really, unless I missed one, oh, it's down here too. On the feet. I think this is another shade. So I think this is going to be, we'll see if it's the same. It's light shade and then dark shade. Might be the same as the grays up here. Nope, I think that's different. Okay, no, these are the same. You can't see the little pop-up with the eyedropper. I'm actually looking at the color levels. So this color is darker down here, and this one on top is the same. Well, really, unless I missed one, we've got 7, 10, 13 different shades. And so what we'll do is we'll copy this, go over to our boy here, and I actually haven't done this specifically on one before. I probably should because it's a good idea. But this is our base list of color palettes from Honchcrow, our our master palette of all the different shades. So eventually, when I get to doing the actual shading on the lines, we're going to need to follow this and be as close as possible. The one thing I was talking about before is doing kind of like highlights. So what we could do is specifically on the tail. I thought about doing, since it's like one big, almost like a sash type tail, and then it's got the lines, doing like white and red, or blue and red. Let's see. Let's try white first. We'll go light shade. Oh, I was thinking multiple stripes. That might look a little bit silly, but we can see. Let's go white in the middle. I don't want to do red, white, and blue because this is going to look like an American flag. And this bird definitely works for the mob, not the government. Let me copy the midtones like so. Oh, so we got a hydrate reminder from Iconic. So what I'm doing here, again, playing around with the shades. If we did red, then it would essentially look like this. And, oh, that's going to be a little bit complicated. Maybe we go one shade. Like that. Like that. It's going to be kind of approximate, but that's okay. Now the lines, because the way I'm doing this are going to be really, really difficult because they have to be bounded gray on one part, red on another part. It's a bit of a nightmare. I gotta think about that. So I could go all one color, but then it's gonna look like it's pooping out one big red ribbon. I don't want to do that either. Okay. All right. Let's commit. We're gonna commit. Oh, this looks like toothpaste. Yeah, what is it? Is it Winter Fresh? The one that has the green, red, and white? Winter Fresh? That's the one I'm thinking of, I think. Sarah says, tweak the beak to make it more serious. I could definitely give this one more of a frown. Thought about trying to re-render it so the beak's open, but that's very difficult. Instead, we could, let's see. Trying to make it kind of tilt down slightly. Yeah, that's not bad. I have to fiddle around with that a little bit. Could even just have it go straight across. It still looks like a frown. I can definitely say we have picked a challenging Pokemon to try and fuse here. It's a cool idea, though. It's going to require quite a bit of fine-tuning, I think. Oh no, you're fine, Iconic. I could use a good challenge. This one's definitely outside my comfort zone, but that's good. I don't know that we'll have a completely finished product today on stream, but if we end up going beyond, I will keep working on this thing, and then I'll post like a wet work in progress in the Discord so that people can see what I'm actively doing. Because some of these take longer than others. That Pidgeot one definitely took a lot of time. Okay, now I gotta figure out this mess here, right at the base of the tail. I think I'm gonna have to blend the colors because in the original, the tail's one shade of color, so it's just one big splotch of color from right here. But because we're not doing that anymore, I'm gonna need to have the lines kind of look like they're actually leaving the body. That makes sense. Oh balls, I've been coloring on the wrong layer. That's the palette layer. Oops. Oh well, that's not a big deal. Fortunately, that's not a problem. We just do this. Separate out that, put it on its own layer, and then just merge this down. That's not the end of the world for this particular type of drawing. Now everything's on one. Okay. I think we're making progress here on the tail. Nope, wrong shade. Okay, I think I'm going to leave the feet the color they are on the original. And that'll be sort of a holdover from Articuno, because what do Honchkro's feet look like? Oh no, they're a different color. Okay, I think I have to fix that. That's not hard. Let's do it like this. Is it mid-tone here? Yeah, I think it would look like this. And this is the shade. That is interesting. It's almost like we're missing a shade. I'm gonna do it in black, and then I'll figure that out later. Yeah, we'll do it like that. It's actually kind of easy to lose the feet just because they're so skinny. In fact, looking at the body, I think maybe thicken the thighs a little bit. The thing doesn't look quite so top heavy. Yeah, that'll probably do for now. Might have to mess around with the line art down on the lower extremities. Now for shading on sort of scarf bits here. We'll rough that in. Gotta think of the light source again. Coming from the upper left, shining sort of down. So this would cast a shadow here. Okay. Let's go ahead and save our progress. Kind of clean up the shading on the wingtips. Again, I'm gonna have to go through and redo all of the highlighting later. But for now, we'll leave it in black. Now the feathers. Easily the most difficult part of this whole thing. I don't think I'm going to do highlights on the feathers. We'll leave the highlighting for the tail. But if we look at Articuno, yeah, it's got these almost looks like highlights along the feathers. The light source shading here looks weird because assuming the light's coming from the upper left, it's almost like a reflective highlight instead of a shadow on the wingtips, which makes it almost look like the light's kind of reflecting off of or hitting it from the front instead of the upper side. So that's going to be kind of a challenge. This will be a bit of trial and error. I foresee me getting comments about the lighting and shading on this one just because of how weird the angle is. If I don't like it, I'm just going to block shade the whole thing darker. But for now, I'm going to try and follow the original and do this sort of highlights on the tips. Like that. And I think it's probably just going to be a matter of playing around with the extent of the lighting on the wingtips here. I kind of realized looking at the face for Honchcrow, its features sort of blend together. Like it doesn't have a defined eye line because I guess the effect is basically like the whole face is partly shadowed by the hat, since you can't see it in a 2D render, but it's got an actual brim on this thing on its head. Okay, let's start actually shading in the right color with the lines. So we need this mid-tone here. And so I did want to talk a little bit about this because it's something I've had to get better at since it's not how I normally sprite. But the upper edges of the sprite that are basically intersecting or being highlighted by the light source are not supposed to be black. If you look at the Pokemon old school sprites in the older gens, the upper edge, so if you see where my cursor is kind of going here, is not black. It's a darker shade to kind of distinguish it, but it's not black. Black is reserved for like the undersides of the shadows, like clearly defined shadowed areas. And it's a little bit hard to tell because this shade here that I'm using on the blue is very dark, but it is not black. And so what I'm doing is I'm going through the sections and I'm basically recoloring them because I knew I'd have to do this eventually. I'm recoloring them so that it's following that rule. And I'm leaving the underside edges black. And so the parts of the wing, they're not going to be black. They're going to be dark, dark blue. And it's a little bit of trial and error, but this has been the hardest thing for me to learn. After looking at enough of the sprites that people have done and the ones that are in the games, I understand how it works, but my brain is not used to coloring that way. That's not what I wanted. So to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here, for scarf, these upper sections need to be this kind of gray darker tone, and the underparts here, the hardest shadows would be black. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back and redone the shading and shadowing just because it didn't look quite right. And it's very likely I'll have to do that for this one as well. But that's okay. Almost seems arbitrary, but the people who've been doing this for a while have such a keen eye. They can point out readily where like the lighting is slightly off, or if one of the lines doesn't follow the right shade properly. It's kind of remarkable how good they are at that. It's impressive. Let's zoom out and take a look. Still not sold on the tips of the wings here. Could be the shape. It's a little better. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to deal with the wing that's going to be folded in. I think this will also look more or less natural when it's completely colored in like the rest of the body. And I could shade it a little bit to make it look more natural. So we got a stretch reminder from Sour Lad. Maybe I should make the shoulder like 1 pixel higher. That's not bad. I gotta fix some of the redundant shades, I think. Usually the whites and black tones are the ones that end up being redundant. I have to go back. It's part of the reason why for the legs, even though we weren't going to change the color too much, why I went in and just inked everything in black. Okay, let's go ahead and save. And we'll zoom out and we'll take a look at what we've done here. And maybe I can show you folks how the color tone site I was talking about works. It is kind of neat. Okay. This definitely isn't 100% final, but I think this is actually better progress than I thought I was going to make on such a difficult fusion to put together. I think the idea of the tail having the the highlights. It's kind of an interesting effect. We'll see how jarring it is for the people who are reviewing this thing. Still not entirely sold on the highlights of the feathers. I will think on that for a little bit and see. But yeah, this one was tough. This is definitely a good challenge. Oh, I see a part I need to fix. It looks a little better. So definitely shout out to both Iconic and Sour Lad for the suggestion on the components and the typing. Let me save this and I'll show you folks what it looks like on the site. So we're gonna call this one. This is Haunch Kuno. Okay, pull the site up. We'll go back to the browser source. You can go away now. All right, let me put the source back up. So this site is called Pixel Color Counter. It's a GitHub site. I don't know if the person who created this originally intended for it to be used like this, but basically it just uses an algorithm to determine all of the distinct color shades in an image, be it a pixel image or anything. And okay, if I go and grab Haunch Kuno, might be a little bit tough to see. Blow this up a little bit. What it's done is it's taken the ping that I created of the sprite, and then it maps out every single unique color shade in the entire sprite, entire image. The 6155 is just the empty blank space around. You can disregard that. But everything else here is a unique shade that this is detected somewhere in the image. And the big ones to look out for are the ones with small numbers, or ones that look really, really close. So this one right here, the 66, is one of the dark grays, I think. But this one, and this is where a lot of it can get really time consuming and kind of drive me up the wall. This means there is one color pixel of this shade, this kind of light gray tone, somewhere on the image. Don't know where, doesn't tell me, but somewhere on the image there's this unique color. So I have to go and fix it at some point. Not gonna do it right now, but at some point I gotta go in and figure out where that is and then adjust it to one of these other ones. Probably this color, the 126, because they're very close. But yeah, I've had a couple come back where it's like one pixel. That Latin Air one I showed you folks earlier had like one rogue pixel that ended up being part of the outline that wasn't deleted properly, and that's where it was. And I probably spent 30 minutes scrolling through and checking every color of every pixel until I found it, and that was very, very annoying. But this site's pretty cool. It's an interesting tool. And so 18 unique colors is a bit on the high side. Without this one, it'd be down to 17. I could potentially wipe out this white color and then just match it with this one. So I could probably drop this down to like 16, realistically. don't know where that is though. 31? I'd have to look. Maybe it's the part of the tail, the upper part of the tail. But anyway, that's the color counter site. Really neat tool. And something that we use to kind of check the coloring on the spray at the end. I'm just taking a look at our boy here, thinking about anywhere else that I'd have to adjust. For now, not exactly that concerned with it. In fact, I'm going to try and fix that color issue. I'll check it later. But I'm going to try and head that off at the pass and we'll see if it fixes it. What I've done is I've basically made all these parts the same white color. And the same with the talons. And I'll see when I check it again later if I've missed a pixel somewhere. It's always like one stray pixel that I have to hunt for. Sorry, lad, says the gray near the beak. You know what I think it is? Now that I'm zooming in, I think it's this one right here, which is part of the copy paste. When we cut the head off, you can tell because it's very hard to see probably, but it's very slightly transparent. That's our rogue pixel. I guarantee it. In fact, I'll check it right now. If you're talking about that, then you have a really good eye. This one right here. Here, I'll highlight it. This one I just made white. If you've spotted that in the stream, Sour Lad, then you have an insanely good eye. You can find out though. All I have to do is resave this and re-upload it. And we'll do it in real time. Nope. So that shade was identical to something else, which is kind of weird. I'm surprised that happened. So you can see that one, it's still there. So that wasn't it. But that had to be something that was pinging because it was slightly transparent. But most likely what I'd have to do is look at every instance where that color shows up and do like a refill. Again, I'm not going to go through the entire exercise here because it's not that interesting to look at. But I would take the color shade and anywhere where I see it, like down here on the toe talons, just form fill it with that color and then check and see if that eliminated it. If not, then I go through and I do it again over and over. It's tedious. It's one of the more tedious things to do, but it's okay. Another thing, I'll kind of demonstrate this. I've learned quite a bit about looking out for this as well. I can't remember if I talked about this on the last stream, so I'll mention it again here. Another thing that I kind of am trained to look for because of the way I've done spriting in the past, but staircasing, go ahead and save this. Staircasing is another thing they always really carefully scrutinize. So let's say we're doing a line like this, and again, if I've talked about this before, I apologize, but I wanted to mention it again. If we had a line like this, which is single pixel boundaries essentially, but it was drawn like this, it's too thick. They call it staircasing because you've got double pixels that are making it thicker and looks like a staircase. The Pokemon sprites in the games don't do that. They're all single pixel like this. And so when you're doing your line work, you have to make sure you're not staircasing anywhere. And I usually clean stuff up as I go, which is why you don't see it on what we're doing here. But yeah, that's one thing that they definitely look very closely at when you're submitting stuff. And now I'm kind of used to it because when I draw regular sprites, I do single pixel boundaries like that already. So I'm used to like hunting for these and just getting rid of them as I go. But that and the lighting and the shading are the biggest things when it comes to the Infinite Fusion format. Other than that, it's really not that demanding of a style. It's just an interesting challenge. Saralad says, make copies and just crop it into pieces and see which got the stray. I could do that too. I think that would actually take longer because I'd have to like cut and copy out sections of the image and save them as all separate pings. It's actually faster, I think, to just go through each like section and fill it down with the right color. Another thing that I did in order to figure out where the problem was is I took the screen capture of the color picker site. Like I just took a quick like snip of the site and pasted it into Photoshop and then color sampled the color that was stray and then filling like sections down with that next to it to find the one like straggler. For 1 pixel, I don't know if that's super helpful, but if it's like 5, if there's 5 stray shades, then I would just color sample the stray color from the site and then isolate it that way in Photoshop, which is incredibly tedious and annoying, but not hard, just takes time. Another thing would be to see if there's any leftover shades on the boundary from when we were cutting and copying parts. So the easiest way to check that is just to fill around it. And so I've had a couple where like these sections were the stragglers and I just had to delete them out. Again, not hard. But I am curious when I fixed the feet. Did I get it? If not, then that's going to be something to deal with later. I did see your save reminder, Saralad. I did a quick save. Nope. That one straggler pixel's hanging out somewhere. Oh, hold on. It didn't save. Let's try that again. Let me re-upload it. Nope. All right. Well, I'll get it eventually. It's probably somewhere stupid. Okay. Well, that definitely took longer than I expected. I figured we'd get through maybe 2 today. But I think the end results for this one will be worth it once it's completely finalized and done. Normally I can get through these a lot faster when I'm not narrating through everything, but I think it was kind of cool to talk through the different steps and experiment around with things on the fly, which is why we do these on stream. Next drawing stream, which I don't know, it's going to be probably in a couple weeks. Next time we'll probably go back to drawing in Clip Studio, unless I come up with some interesting ideas. for sprites because I don't want to do nothing but spriting here, but it is a good opportunity to work through stuff in real time. But yeah, I can post this one in media share once it's more or less finalized, or after I submit it for review and get some more comments, so you folks can see what the final product's going to look like. I've got a whole queue of sprites for Infinite Fusion, and I don't think there's a rule for how many you can submit, but I don't want to just flood the submissions either. Once I get that Pidgeot one approved, I'll figure out the next one. Yeah, I think we will go ahead and wrap up there. Let me go check the homie list and see who is online that we can raid. That is not the raid list. Oh, I see Wazzy's live. I forgot that it's Art Tuesday. Let me go check my main list and see. Eris is online. Dirt's online. I guess we can go head over to... We'll go head over to Wazzy. See what she is making today. Oh, is that Froggy and Banani? Okay, go say hi to the other Americans. So let me go ahead and pause BGM. And we'll go to outro. And we will go ahead and raid. So we'll be back on Thursday, barring any schedule changes, with more Blasphemous. So if you liked watching me suffer through the last stream, then prepare for more of that. But in the meantime, thanks to everyone who came and hung out. Watch me attempt to fuse Pokemon together. But hope you all have a good rest of your night, and I will catch you later. Now let's go say what's up to the Toxic Crew.